Yay, new chapter. Okay, so now we have One Piece chapter 1114, titled The Wings of Icarus, which, of course, is a reference to Greek mythology, with Icarus being the boy who flew too close to the sun. In kind of the somewhat more full story of Icarus is that Icarus's father, whose name I'm going to mispronounce because it's not one that I'm particularly familiar with, Daedalus. Sorry. He is the one that actually built the labyrinth in Crete where the Minotaur is, that then Theseus then slays, and such. And so he's the one who built that, and Icarus is his son. And in order to keep anyone from being able to figure out the maze, the king of Crete at the time, King Minos, locked both Icarus and his father up, so that way they could never tell anyone the secret of the maze, because of course the only one who would be able to figure out the maze would be the guy who built it, or the king's own daughter, who was like, here, take this ball of string and you can use it to follow your way back out as it unravels. Much better than breadcrumbs when it comes to Hansel and Gretel. Yeah. So in the myth, what happens is Icarus and his father have to figure out a way to get out of their cell. And I believe the only way out is up, and to technically, once they figure it out, fly out. And the inventor, the craftsman, Daedalus, ends up making these, wings out of bird feathers and wax and contraption to, frame for them to be able to fly with. And what happens is, of course, they manage to get out, and they are almost home free, and he's like, now, Icarus, don't fly too close to the sun. And Icarus, of course, with his hubris, decides to fly higher. And of course, back during that time frame with the myth, they thought that the actual sun was actually a giant sun being pulled on the chariot by, not Apollo, that's what it gets turned to in Roman mythology, Helios, by Helios in his chariot. And that they were supposed, and that if you got too close, you would be burned. And in this case, Icarus flies too close to the sun, and the wax on the wings starts to melt, and that results in the feathers flying off, and that results in him falling to his death. And, that doesn't go very well, because now Icarus is dead and his father's out a son. So there's that fun bit there. I know they also get referenced in other things. There's the, in Marvel, there is Icarus, who is one of the Eternals. That was in one of the Eternals movie, in the Eternals movie that I actually liked. Whether or not other people did is entirely up to them. And the other reference for Icarus I wanted to pull in is actually from Disney, which also owns Marvel, but this is a different Icarus. So there's the Hercules animated movie that Disney did, and while it does not pay very close attention to Greek mythology as a whole, there is an animated series that goes along with it where Hercules is at high school, or I guess the Greek equivalent of high school, and there's lots of other characters from Greek mythology at this school. There's Helen of Troy, there's Adonis, there's a whole bunch of other ones, and there's lots of Greek myths that get referenced in this series, and I love it, and it's hilarious. And it's supposed to be like Hercules going from when he goes to start to train with Phil all the way up to when he's ready to be a hero. So it's he's training with Phil, but then he's also at high school and having to deal with all of the high school stuff of being a teenager, which is hilarious. Reference, there's also a crossover episode with Aladdin the Animated Series where Hades and Jafar try to team up to take out Aladdin and Hercules, which is hilarious. And so funny, and I loved it. Yeah, Disney multiverse theory there. But in the series, one of Hercules' two best friends are Cassandra, who is supposed to be the reference to Cassandra of Troy, who had visions of the future of like the Trojan horse and everything else that was going to happen, and nobody believed her. And in the series, she's actually still psychic and has visions, and people don't believe her. Or I think Hercules believes her, but most people don't. And then Hercules' other best friend, for long explanation, is Icarus. And it's supposed to be Icarus after he flew too close to the sun. And he's still alive, and we see his parents throughout the course of the series at times. And Icarus is just so funny, but he's so stupid. It's been a long time since I've watched the series, but I at least remember that. But he was a really good friend to Hercules and everything like that. And like he's part of Hercules' group when they go off and have to fight against whatever forces of destruction Hades has sent off to attack the world. So there's a bunch of that stuff that happens, but it's like fun bit there. Also, Meg shows up in the series near the end, so that works too. And that just makes me happy because I love Meg and Hercules. But so the reference there for the wings of Icarus is, of course, Icarus flying too close to the sun, which metaphorically Vegapunk is referencing in this chapter later on, that he flew too close to the sun. But so for the chapter itself, for the cover page, we have where we're actually getting like the favor that Kinemon is asking of Yamato, and Kinemon is asking Yamato to, as Yamato travels around Wano, to make his way first to all the way around the regions, kind of, I think, following supposed to be like a similar path to what Odin traveled before, Yamato would eventually end up back at the capital, similar how, like, Odin ended up back at the capital after he finally became like the daimyo of the Kuri region. But what Kinemon is asking is for Yamato to return this sword that apparently was belonged to Brain Work Yasue. I know these names. That had belonged to Yasue is probably what it's supposed to mean, and to return it to the Ringo region where it's all very snowy and everything, and take the sword there. First return it to the Hakumai region so it can be seen there, and then return it to where Yasue is possibly buried, so that way the sword can be with him, because in Wano they have the tradition where you're given this sword, particularly for like the samurai class and such, you're given this sword when you are born, and or when you become old enough, and then it stays with you, and then when you die it becomes your grave marker, which of course Kawamatsu took advantage of that while he was in the Hakumai region, which is a very snowy and cold region, and where he and Fox thing that I really like, damn it, what's his name? Onimaru, where the two of them spent so much time gathering up those swords and weapons and cleaning them up, so that way then the revolutions, that way the rebellion and such could then use them after the 20-year time span had elapsed, and they would be able to have, their ability to fight against Kaido at that point in time. And so it's like a nice reference back to that. And of course Yamato is like, of course I'll do it. So that's what he's going to go off to do. So that's probably going to be some of the stuff that we see throughout the course of this. We may finally get to see Ryuma's grave. That's a possibility. Because he's supposed to take it specifically to Enma's shrine. Which is of course a reference to, the king of hell and everything like that. Which is also the reference to Zoro's sword. But going into the actual chapter, we basically start back right where we left off with Vegapunk going like, and the world's going to sink into the ocean. And first we cut to Marine HQ, Navy headquarters in the New World. And, they're just like, oh my god, the world's gonna sink into the ocean, and all of these different, we see a bunch of these different, like, vice admirals and such, like, freaking out, and really the only one of them that I recognize is Hina, so I like the cheese there, but I don't recognize any of the others, and they're just like, does he realize what he's saying? Dr. Vegapunk, oh no, type of a thing, and they're all freaking out about, like, oh my god, does that mean that's real? Does that mean that that's actually gonna happen? Oh god, we are so screwed, type of a thing. And then we also see Sakazuki, and Sakazuki is just more like getting the ellipses. Admittedly, the last time we saw Sakazuki, he was up on top of the red line in Marie Joie attacking Kuma. Admittedly, that was also like a day ago. So, give or take time frame, he's had time to go back down to Marineford. Also, even if he is up at Marie Joie, we're going to see later in this chapter that they're getting the same broadcast, so it's not like he wouldn't be able to get the information there as well. So he's just like, I don't know what Sakazuki thinks of that. Sakazuki is definitely aware of the fact that they are trying to assassinate Vegapunk. They sent Kizaru and a bunch of ships and Cypher Pole Zero to go and deal with Vegapunk. So it's like he's well aware of the fact that they're trying to assassinate Vegapunk. And in Sakazuki's mind, he's probably of the same opinion that he was when it came to the archaeologists of Ohara, and just, destroy them, and then also destroy any of the ships that are trying to escape, because what if there's an archaeologist on this ship? Gotta wipe all of them out, doesn't care how many innocent people have to die. That sounds like some world leaders in our world right now. And then we cut to Mocktown in the Grand Line, in the Paradise side of the Grand Line. And we haven't been to Mocktown for quite a while. The last time we were in Mocktown, I believe, was when we watched Doflamingo forcing Bellamy and his Sarkis, I think was Bellamy's right-hand man, forcing them to fight. I think was the last time that we ever saw Mocktown, to my knowledge. Unless it got referenced back at some other point in time. Beyond, like, in the flashback that we got with Odin, because Mocktown was in Odin's flashback. But other than that, canonically, the last time we saw it was, I think, 2 years ago, when Doflamingo was there just having fun and messing with his little puppets in regards to Bellamy and such. And everybody just in the bar, probably like the same bar or the same area that we saw the Straw Hats in, Luffy, Nami, and Zoro, and where they met, Bellamy and Blackbeard the last time when they were there. They're just laughing at Vegapunk like, yeah, this guy's a riot. He's trying to make everybody panic and take the world down with him. How the heck is the whole world meant to sink, Mr. Genius? Is what they're doing. So they're just like, yeah, screw it. And of course, that's the mentality of Mocktown, is they mock anything that they don't either care about or understand. So that's what's going on there. Then we jump to Water 7. And we get to see Polly and some of the other members of Gali Law. Mainly Polly, and then I think Lulu. No, not Lulu. Yeah, Lulu, I think, is the other one. The one with the cowlick that keeps moving around. We see them. And I think it's supposed to be Polly talking, or it's supposed to be Iceberg, possibly. And it's like, if he was just talking about this city, I'd believe him in an instant, because we as an audience know that, and the people of Water 7 know that Water 7 is slowly sinking. And that's why Iceberg wanted to build a boat out of the city, so that way they would be able to still float no matter how high the sea levels got. Don't know how far he's gotten on that in 2 years. We'll have to find out. And it's just like, but the whole world, it take a lot more than rising tides to do that, right? And they're just like, that's not a good thing. That's definitely not a good thing that we're going to be seeing here. The next place we jump to is the other underwater prison of Impel Down. And we cut to Doflamingo and Magellan having, I guess, is somewhat of a civil conversation, given the fact that it involves Doflamingo. And Doflamingo is just cracking up as he's still pinned to the floor. Because I guess this message is being relayed all over, either all over Impel Down itself, or it's being relayed to the point where at least Magellan has like a transponder snail with him, and it's giving him the information. And of course, he's guarding Doflamingo right now. And that means that Doflamingo is going to be hearing all of this information as well. Because, no offense, well, okay, if I was trapped in this prison, or if I worked at this prison, and it's going to get mentioned here in a minute, if I worked at this prison or was trapped in this prison right now, I would be of the mind of like, if I work there, how many vacation days do I have built up and can I use them now and never come back and still get paid? That would be my thought. But the other side of that is like, okay, I would be getting pretty panicked. It's like I work in a building that is essentially 90% underwater. Most of that is probably going to be fine, but the second the top part is covered and we just have water pouring in, we are all dead. And Doflamingo's kind of referencing that, and he's like, let's just get better and better. Isn't it your job to take care of the inmates, Magellan? What are you going to do if the prison gets completely flooded? And Magellan is just sitting there like, you have a point. The sudden sea level rise earlier caused havoc with some cells, meaning that there are some cells that just have issues with that in regards to like the water pressure would rise as well. If the sea level rises, water pressure will rise as well the further down you go. And he's like, and that was only 1 meter. How many meters would it take to cover the whole world? And Doflamingo is still laughing. He's just like, most urban areas would be screwed if water levels rose just another 5 meters. Maybe we should all evacuate. We could always go somewhere up high, which, knowing Doflamingo, is supposed to be go up to Marijois. But the most that would happen there is just all of the prisoners would get turned into slaves if they tried to evacuate to Marijois, or shot. No offense, I think I'd probably rather be shot than forced to be a slave in Marijois. And then, instead of going up high, we then cut down to the Ryugu Kingdom, Fishman Island, and we have Shirahoshi, her father's giant whale, her shark, the ministers of the left and the right, and then a bunch of the other, the Ammonites, the guards are there as well. I don't see any of her brothers. I know that we saw Fukaboshi, Ryuboshi, and Momboshi back when they had gotten back from the Reverie. We saw them. They were fine. They got all out of there with everything that was going on with Charlos and everything like that. They managed to all get out of there safely. And this looks very similar to that same setup where they were talking to Garp in the throne room, and Garp was sitting in the bubble. And they're listening to this as it's being, relayed to them. Whether they have a giant actual visual Dendenmushi or just listening to the transponder snail, I'm not sure. But they're just yeah, that doesn't sound good. And she's Shirahoshi is Father, is that really going to happen? And he's it sounds so outlandish. Which admittedly, I don't blame him. It sounds outlandish as well, but still, it's not good. Then we cut back to Egghead Island, and on Egghead, we have a bunch of the Marines on the different ships that are currently attacking Egghead. They're all freaking out, rightfully so. They're this is crazy talk, but the world's most acclaimed scientist is saying it. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's true. It'll cause mass panic and chaos. And then we see Hound, who's one of the new vice admirals that we got introduced to, and he's just enough of the lies and madness, Vegapunk. So it's just yeah, I don't blame all of them for well, even if it's a lie, it's going to make other people panic because it's coming from Vegapunk. But then why would Vegapunk lie? But we are trying to kill him, so why would he not try to do something to make us want to turn our backs against the Navy? Or try to do something to make us panic? It's that back and forth type of thing. And it's just and if you cause panic all over the world because everybody thinks, oh my god, our homes are going to sink into the ocean, that's not going to go very well. From there, we cut into Egghead Island itself, and we have the telepathic communication happening between the different Gorosei. We see Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, and Ethan Barron, and they're just quickly, eradicate the broadcast snail. No, snuff out every living thing you can sense. We can deal with the ramifications later. And then we also see Shepard. No, not Shepard. Mars. We see Marcus Mars there as well. And three of them are still in their beast forms. Warcury is still in his beast form as the bull, or as the Hoki, and then the sandworm. Saturn is still fighting against the Straw Hats right now. Ethan Barron is probably still dealing with Sanji. We don't see Sanji in the chapter, though. And then Marcus Mars is off still being the Itumare, with York running around as well. And she's just like, damn it, Stella, did he really spill the beans on everything? And she's just trying to figure out, like, trying to think of, like, where the snail would be, because she wants to keep the Gorosei from killing her. Which is fair, I'll give her that. But she's the one that caused this mess in the first place. If she hadn't caused this mess, well, then Vegapunk wouldn't have died necessarily, and the broadcast wouldn't have been sent out. So there's, the whole dominoes. Okay, then we cut back to the message from Vegapunk, and he's like, please humor me for a moment as I make a prediction. Assuming my center data is accurate, a few days from now, as I record this, an extremely vicious earthquake will rock the entire planet. We cut to another area, and I think this place kind of looks like Alabasta, or it's at very least a very similar based kingdom. We don't get an exact setting for what it is, but it kind of looks like Alabasta, and it's just a bunch of civilians watching what's going on. Then we cut to two characters I was not expecting to see in this. We cut to Charlotte Smoothie and Charlotte Montdor, which I'm like, just did videos on them. Smoothies will actually come out after this chapter goes up by a bit, but I made reference to, like, well, if we see her again, this might happen. Not this specifically, but you get the idea. And we see Smoothie and Montdor, and Smoothie is just like, don't tell me he's talking about today's earthquake. Didn't he die after recording this? So I like seeing them. It's like, okay, they're alive. Some of the Charlotte siblings that were on the boat are alive. We see nothing else of Totland, and we see no other homies. We don't see Big Mom, but we at least see two of them. And they're actually two of the ones that I actually like. So that makes me happy. Then we cut back to Vegapunk still talking, and it's overlaid with seeing one of the islands that has definitely been flooded right now because of the rising sea levels. And it's not a specific island, it's just probably one of the random islands. And he's just like, following this calamity, sea levels worldwide will raise by 1 meter. The number of islands will become innumerable. And naturally, many beaches will also be completely submerged. And we see a bunch of these, these little island, this town that is now flooded with, like, water going a good way up the building. Lots of these people are in boats trying to protect themselves. And they're just like, no way, he actually saw it coming. And, of course, we as an audience know that this is coming as a result of what happened with the Mother Flame attacking Lelucia. Because that means that, like, all of this water level and sea level have all shifted, and that's making all of these earthquakes and tsunamis and everything all over the world be affected by it. And that's what's causing this. We're going to cut to another character that we have not seen for a long time. We cut to Longring Longlan and Tangent, who, beyond one cover page, where we see that he was reunited with his family and he gets to see his grandchildren again, and we see his horse Shelly in the background. I love the horse. And, we see him. He's got his stilts, but it looks like he's standing in the water in his stilts. So it's just like, dude, you were trapped on your stilts for a very long time. Get off the stilts. Type of a thing. And so we see Tangent, we see Shelly, and we see some of his grandkids in the background. His family in the background. And the Vegapunk message is, if this doesn't come to pass, then feel free to disregard the rest of this message. No, I still want to hear the rest of the message. Because even if you were wrong about that, other stuff is happening right now, and I would still like to hear the rest of this TED Talk that you're going to be giving us very quickly, Mr. Vegapunk. So we see that. And now, as we know with Longring Longland, it's designed to be this island that is like all of these, like, it's all like one island, but it kind of looks like a crown, like a bunch of fingers sticking up out of the ground, out of the water. But then, when the tide lowers, it's all connected in a ring. But then when it rises, it's only like the top parts that are still there. And that means that it's very difficult for the citizens of the island, for the residents of the island, to be able to move around. unless they travel at specific times, and Tanjin got left behind, and then he interacted with the Straw Hats, and then, found his way back to his family because of Aokiji freezing the water. So there's that. Speaking of Aokiji, so I like this, speaking of Kuzan, so I like this transition here. Because the last time the crew saw Tanjin involved Aokiji. So I like this, the transition here. We cut to Hachinosu, the pirate island, and we see Aokiji, and it looks like he's been all bandaged up from his fight with Garp and Koby and everything like that. We don't see Garp, but we're seeing Aokiji, or Kuzan, whichever one you want to go with. And we see this other pirate in the background, and this other pirate who is just random Blackbeard pirate person, underling number, 72, I don't know. This is freaky. How was he able to call this? Call in regards to what happened with the earthquake and such. So there's that. And we have the Vegapunk message continuing. And it's just assuming, however, these events have transpired, then please pay heed to what I have to say. And now we cut back to Egghead Island, where we cut back to the top of the dome, the Labo phase, where we see that the Straw Hats are still having to fight against Saturn at this point in time. First, we have more of the message, and it's just the earthquake I just predicted cannot, strictly speaking, be considered a natural phenomenon. So this is obviously the reference back to what happened with the Lucia and the Mother Flame. And then we cut to where we see the Straw Hats still fighting against Saturn. Lilith has also joined the fight, and she's using some of her bazooka gun, or using what might be the bubble gun, to try to see if that might at least somewhat affect Saturn. They seem like they're at least causing some damage to Saturn. I think Nami probably electrocuted him. We know that Brook at least cut off one of his legs. Chopper is in his guard point with all of his fur. So even if he's hit, his fur should protect him from being affected by any of Saturn's poison that's on him. So we have that. And they're just yelling at Saturn. It's and Saturn, I think, is the one yelling, Vegapunk, not another word! And then it's just, the Straw Hats fighting back, and it's just get out of here. And I think it's supposed to be them trying to get Robin to leave, but that's not really happening because she's still not exactly in the best position to be able to leave at this point in time. But the Straw Hats are going full tilt, trying to get rid of Saturn and protect Robin. And so I'm going to, before I continue with the Vegapunk message, I'm going to finish explaining what's happening on this page. So the next thing that we see happen, and I like this reference here, is Brook, Usopp, and Nami get sent flying back. Robin uses her powers to make the arm web net that she can make, that she uses to then stop them from flying away, to protect their impact so they don't get hurt. So that happens. We haven't seen her use that for a while. She used that at Dressrosa, I know that, a couple of times, but I don't remember if she used it at any point when they were in Wano. But I like that ability that she does there, which we saw her use something, I think, similar to that way back pre-time skip as well. So it's that's not really necessarily a full-on new ability, but she's just been practicing with it probably. We also see Chopper getting stabbed. Again, he's in his guard point, so he's got all of his fur and stuff like that to protect him. So he's probably still in pain, but probably not going to be super bad. And we see Saturn. He got hurt. It looks like part of his eyes regenerating, and then he's just yelling at them to be gone, and he's trying to get past them. So he manages to get them out of the way. Now, admittedly, going after Robin was not his priority at this point in time. His priority is to get to the Mother Flame, which we're going to see in a moment. But his, it's the Straw Hats are in his way, and he more just wants to get them out of his way. He's I can deal with Robin later. If I managed to get her at this point in time, that would have been fine. But I have bigger fish to fry right now. I have a bigger brain to deal with. So he's getting past them. And Vegapunk's message continues, and it's I've always naively yearned for peace and prosperity. And the message continues, and that brought me to what proved to be my first grave sin. And we cut to where we have Saturn, who's gotten past Nami's group with Robin, and is skittering toward another part of the lab. we find out he's trying to get to where the Mother Flame is because they need to keep that safe. And then they also need to just like get rid of any other snails, as many as they can find, so that way they can try to stop this message from stop the message from proceeding. They also do not want to destroy the Mother Flame because that's one of the things that they need to keep the giant freaking laser cannon thing that they need to keep Eem happy. That type of a thing. So they're doing that. Saturn's working his way there. We have another moment where he's communicating with Mars, and he's just like, Mars, what is the status of the power station? I am seeing to it now. And, so it's like going back and forth there. And he's like, we must preserve the contents of that room. I'm almost there. And Vegapunk continues, and he's just like, I was fixated on my dream of developing an everlasting energy source, hell-bent on driving the world to a bigger and brighter future. But I flew too close to the sun. And again, over this moment, we have Saturn getting his way into what is definitely supposed to be like the power station area where the Mother Flame is. And he's just like, oh, the Mother Flame. And it's this huge tank type thing that is kind of similar to what Vegapunk's brain was in earlier. So it's kind of similar to that, although it's much more reinforced and much more metallic looking instead of like a giant clear like glass jar, glass tank. And it's there, and inside of it, we see this like little flame that looks like it's sitting in water. Now, I don't know if this is supposed to 100% be like a fire source that's actually sitting in water, or if it's more of a fire source that is just designed to be this way. I'm not sure. We don't get a full explanation as to how it works in this chapter. We just see Saturn has turned back into his normal form, and he's hitting things with his cane. So it's old man yells at cloud concept of him hitting things with his cane. I don't know what he's trying to attack right now. I mean, you wouldn't want to destroy the Mother Flame, but I don't know how much he knows about how this whole system works. So there's that. But he's made his way there, and he's like, we have to eradicate all life forms. We must be relentless. And so Saturn's opinion is to try to protect the Mother Flame, which they all know that they need to protect the Mother Flame because they need that for the cannon, giant laser cannon, island destroying cannon. So that's what they still need to keep there. But there is also, they need to get rid of all of the snails, and if any of the snails are in there, he needs to get rid of all of them, because that would actually be a safe place to put the snails, would be in here, depending on how many of the snails Vegapunk has that are all broadcasting at the same time. And then we get this closer look at the fire that is inside of this water tank. Now, we don't know 100% if it is water that is in this tank. It could be just some other type of liquid that is designed to... I guess the best way to describe it would be it's some other type of liquid that might just be designed to prevent this power from going out of control, this fire, eternal flame, whatever you want to call it, from going out of control. And that maybe when the laser is used, that power is like the liquid is drained away and then it fires and the liquid fills back up again. That is a possibility. I don't know. It's not 100%, explained in this. We just have Vegapunk talking, and he's just like, I shouldn't get ahead of myself, though. In other words, where the world is heading, we must first address the past, specifically what happened between 900 and 800 years ago. So now we're getting into Void Century stuff. But before that, as Vegapunk is talking, we see some other images. One of the images we see is the giant iron giant moseying its way through the fire, and the Marines are still firing at it. It's just like, nothing is working. It will not stop. We cannot get it to stay still. We cannot get it to just cease and fall apart and whatever. And so that's going on. And they're not happy about that. It's like nothing's even phasing it. Then we cut back to Luffy, Dory, and Broggy. And they're being surrounded by fire, probably because Warcury has set everything around him on fire. Set that off. Plus there's other fire from like the cannons and everything like that are going on. And they're just like, yeah, that's hot. And like Luffy's back in Gear 5th and he's laughing his butt off again. And he's just like, and Dory and Bragi are just like, this is really hot. And it's just like, we'll be burned to a crisp if we don't hurry. And they're just running as fast as they can. Vegapunk is continuing his message, as I said, between the 800 and 900 years ago. Then we cut up to Marie Joie, and we kind of see Eames' silhouette, and he's just like the ellipses of just like listening to what's going on. Probably not happy with what he's hearing, but he's also like, unless I want to reveal myself to the world, I must allow this to play out and allow the Gorosei to see if they are able to complete this task to my satisfaction. Some of the information that has leaked is something that I can work with at the very least. But, it's like, what plotting is going on in Eames' head right now in regards to figuring out how damage control on this? We'll have to wait and see. And we cut, as I said, we cut to Marie Joie and we hear Vegapunk keep talking. He's just like, a century-long period that most think of as a blank part of history. And he's like, fittingly, it is known as the Void Century, since all information has either been erased or lost. And that is true for the most part, but there is one last key to unlocking some scraps and echoes from back then. And we see a bunch of these other celestial dragons that are just yelling at the screen, and they're just like, those miserable Marines, what are they doing? Hurry and shut this cretin down, shut his mouth, and get rid of him, and everything like that. So they're very angry about this. Why, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, like, unless some of these guys are related to the Gods Knights, I don't see how any of them would have any opinion of what else is going on in the world beyond the world is sinking, and I guess that means they don't get food. All they have is cake, which we should be getting to very soon in the anime. That moment, and then we cut to a celestial dragon that we have not seen for a very long time. We cut to Charlos's sister, Shalria, I think is her name, Saint Shalria, and we have not seen her for a long time. We have not seen her since Sabaody, when. After Charlos and Roswald have, Charlos has been punched, Roswald has been knocked out. She gets knocked out as well by Rayleigh's Conqueror's Haki after she tries to shoot, Kami. She gets knocked out as well. And then she's kind of the one that wakes up the fastest because Charlos is in a lot of pain. Rightfully so. And she's the one that actually wakes up first. But we haven't really seen her since then. We've seen Charlos and Roswald, obviously, back with everything that happened at Reverie, but we have not seen Shalria since then. And we see the other celestial dragons are yelling at us, like, death is too good for him. Bring back his body and I'll tear it limb from limb. I'm like, calm down, dude. And she's just thinking, the Void Century? What is he talking about? And I'm like, oh my god, she had an independent thought. She had an independent thought. Now, I am not saying by any means that Shalria is going to be any form of a voice of reason or anything along those lines. I would not think that of this character, given we have seen nothing else that could indicate that. But she had a thought. She's curious. That's better than could be said for a bunch of these other ones that are yelling at the screen. And then Vegapunk keeps talking. And we're going to cut to something else that made me so effing happy. Actually, several panels that are coming up made me so happy to see. But Vegapunk keeps talking. He's just like, the poneglyphs. These lonely stones dwelling in various quiet and calm lands all over the globe. The text inscribed on them, once decoded, is our one and only method of grasping this unknown past. So, as he said before, it's like there are scraps and echoes that they can find. Scraps and echoes that have still been passed down. The legend of Nika that has been passed down through the slaves and Marie Joie and is still kept alive on Elbath. this devil fruit that kept running from the government from person to person and is now with Luffy and finally awake again. We see that, those scraps and echoes there, scraps and echoes that happen with what was remnants of the books that were saved on Ohara and that Vegapunk had and has read thanks to Saul. And so we get some of, it's like that's what he's referencing, these like bits and pieces that can be like put together. It's like getting these bits and pieces of a story and then you have to like figure out how they all fit together, but then you also don't have the full context for like, well, we know there was an ancient kingdom and we know there was a guy named Joy Boy and we know that there was a war and the 20 kings and that was when the world government was founded. But the question is like, okay, how far good and bad and everything like that were these different kingdoms? And, different things like that. We know some of that stuff that came out of the Void Century, but we don't know everything that was exactly going on before the Void Century and during the Void Century. We know something happened with, Joy Boy that's going to get referenced. We know that there was stuff with the Mermaid Princess Poseidon and different things like that. We know that there was the battleship Pluton. We know that was when Wano closed itself off from the rest of the world. Probably the giants distanced themselves from the rest of the world as well. Stuff that happens with the Minx and Zoe and everything like that. And like we as an audience have been given these different scraps and everything like that. But until we actually have, bits here framed by Vegapunk, which is kind of nice. But also until we just get actually the full flashback with, that Oda will give us eventually, hopefully, when we probably get to Laugh Tale, we won't get the full context of everything. So there's that concept there. But the panels that made me so happy to see, or a couple of them, the first two that made me so happy to see, is that while Vegapunk is talking about the poneglyphs, we cut to what is most likely Elbath, given the size of all the trees that we are seeing. Compared to the size of the individual that we see Saul. And he's laughing. And he's just like sitting there in the forest, just like laying back and like listening probably to like whatever Denden Mushi he has that is like playing this information to him. And he's just like, da she, the same laugh that he taught Robin all those years ago and that she still uses today to help make herself happy. And we see Saul, and that it's like he's not covered in bandages anymore. And it's not like the black paneled flashback type of a thing. It's like this is called Saul currently, which is just awesome. So, God, I hope that results. I like so much of the fan base just want Robin and Saul to see each other again in a happy situation for at least a little bit so she can see him again and he can see her again and he can tell her how proud he is of her. I want that so much. From there, we cut to something else that we have not seen for a very long time. We cut to Orange Town in the East Blue. And of course, Orange Town in the East Blue is of course the town that Luffy and Nami and Zoro helped save from the Buggy Pirates. And we saw it in the live action recently, and we saw Boodle there. And now we're seeing Boodle here. Now, we know that at the end of the Orange Town arc that Luffy left money there from some of Buggy's treasure, so the townsfolk could use that to rebuild their town after Buggy destroyed so much of it. And that that of course that's where Chow Chow is and everything like that, with the pet food store and everything like that, and his owner that had passed away and everything. And Boodle is taking care of Chow Chow, and like we saw in a panel after like the 2-year time skip from the Decks of the World, we saw that they had rebuilt Orange Town and that there's like now a fountain in the middle that has Chow Chow on it, but Chow Chow is also wearing a straw hat, which makes me so happy. And in this, we are seeing Boodle sitting on the fountain talking with Chow Chow and talking with this little girl who her hair is kind of similar to Boodle, so maybe she's his granddaughter or something, I don't know. But she's talking and she's like, hey, did you know that way back when 20 kings teamed up to create the world? It's just like, I wonder if this old timer knows about any of them. And we see that they have a little Denden Mushi that is talking and that they're listening to. And it has Chow Chow's face on the back, so that's adorable for the Denden Mushi. And the girl seems to be reading what might be like a comic book. And I actually referenced comics in One Piece to my mom last night. Because I had made reference about Sora, the warrior of the sea, and how that's basically marine propaganda with the Germa and everything like that. But then how they also have like all the other miscellaneous little comic things that like Oda referenced in an SBS for like what would be like in the newspapers or other books and stuff like that they have for kids and stuff like that. And this girl looks like she's reading a little comic book. So this might be like a world government official comic book about like the history of the world government and how it was founded by 20 kings and everything like that. So that might be what she's reading. But Poodle's just like, who can say? What do you think, Chow Chow? And Chow Chow's just like, woof. Sorry if that was loud. And then we cut to, as Vegapunk keeps talking, we see Amazon Lily. We see Margaret there, along with a couple of the other Kuja, and they're just listening in on what's going on. And Vegapunk is still talking. And he's like, despite this, any attempts to decipher the poneglyphs is considered taboo by the world government. And so I felt compelled to commit my second grave sin. So his first grave sin is creating this like eternal flame type of a thing that is part of the mother flame. That's what he considers to be his first sin. That it is this like eternal flame that can be used to power stuff, but it is also exceedingly destructive in what it can do. And now he considers his second grave sin is, of course, trying to read the poneglyphs. And he's just like, I betrayed the world government and studied this forbidden era myself. I was fortunate enough to inherit several documents from a certain group of exceptional archaeologists, and that allowed me to decipher a number of poneglyphs. I pursued this research as far as possible, and I have no regrets. So as this is happening, we cut to where we see Nami's group, and they all seem to be okay, a little bit, beaten up, but they all seem to be fine. Chopper's still in his guard point form. They may need to, clean out the poison from his fur or something like that so he doesn't get sick or doesn't get any of them sick. But we all see them, and, of course, this is the reference to, Brook is yelling in the background, Zoro-san, Jinbei-san, trying to figure out where the F they are, because we don't know. And all the Straw Hats and Lilith that are there seem to be... Well, actually, we don't see Usopp, but I'm assuming he's there, too. They all seem, a little bit beat up, as I said, but fine for the most part. None of them seem majorly injured unless we cut out away or something like that, and we cut back and Usopp's majorly injured or something like that. But to get... Again, Saturn's goal was not to kill Robin at this point in time. If he'd done it, it would have been a bonus on his opinion, but his job was to get to where the mother flame was, which he did. And of course, this, the reference to the exceptional archaeologist is, of course, the reference back to Ohara, and of course, the books that were saved on Ohara 22 years ago, and how Vegapunk had managed to, via, becoming, acquaintances with Saul and everything, get his hands on those books and is able to actually read them and piece together so much of this knowledge. And possibly, we know there was a poneglyph on Ohara, inside of the tree. And even if the tree got destroyed, those poneglyphs are supposed to be freaking indestructible. So I would assume that the poneglyph is fine. And while those things are freaking huge and heavy, I would assume with enough giants, you could move it. I mean, we saw Watatsume move one in, the Jinbei cover story that we had. Jinbei's seafloor adventure or whatever, Watatsume was able to move it pretty easily and everything. So a couple of giants having the ability to move it, particularly very strong ones like Hirudin and such, they would probably have been able to move the poneglyph and maybe take it with them to Elbaf. So that poneglyph might be on Elbaf. That's a possibility. And the thing that I wanted to point out in regards to the sentiment that Vegapunk had was, I pursued this research as far as possible, and I have no regrets. The comment I wanted to make about that is that, yes, there have been lots of scientists over the years, over the centuries, that have just gone so far and beyond in regards to studying things, in whatever their field of knowledge ended up being. One of the ones I wanted to point out that we know probably led to their death is Marie Curie. And her study of radiation. And we know that, via the amount of radiation that she was exposed to during all of her research, that probably caused her death. It caused whatever illnesses and everything like that she had, and that led to her death. And that is pretty much the epitome of I have no regrets in regards to everything that I studied, in regards to going after this stuff, in regards to studying all of this radiation. I have no regrets in that regard. The other thing I wanted to point out is, I'm not sure exactly how long, but I know that even though Madame Curie or Marie Curie died in like 1930 something, her material that she made, like her notebooks and everything like that, they're still radioactive now and will be for quite a while for as much radiation as they were exposed to, which I'm just like, that's really freaking disturbing. And like they still use her notes and everything like that, but like you have to be like in special attire and equipment and like in special settings to be able to like read them. And I'm sure they've copied everything as well to just like, I don't really want to touch the radioactive book anymore. Let's just copy everything. Let's just take pictures. It's like, yeah, let's do that. I don't want to touch the radioactive book more than necessary. So there's that. Continuing on, Vegapunk also says, history is a story after all, which is true. History is a story that we have been telling and adding to for hundreds and thousands of years. And even, stuff that we still find in deserts and in tombs and in shrines and in other places all over the world keep adding to the history of the world that we know of. And that means, we have to make an adjustment here, or we have to change this, or, this has to be shifted here. Like, there's debates about, like, fully, how, different orders that civilizations happened in at times, and combined with, like, when written language started and when spoken language fully started, and when different things like that. And, like, for a long time before, written language, there was, everything was passed down orally. And that happened for a very long time. And, I mean, still parts of stories are passed down orally. And, it's like, you may not have the book of, like, fairy tales, but you know enough fairy tales that you can pass down that information type of thing. Stuff about, like, Greek mythology way back during the time frame when, Greece was still, way back during those ancient times. Those stories were passed down through spoken word, and that's why some stuff got jumbled up. So we see that. And then we also see where back up on the cloud by where, Usopp's fine. I was going to say, we get to see Usopp in a second because we get to see a little bit more of the Straw Hat group with Nami and Lilith and Robin and such. And what happens is they're still up on the cloud, up on the Pyrobrine clouds for the Sky Islands. And they're just like, oh my god, the ground is moving. That's not good. And they look and they see that the island cloud is actually stretching. And Nami's like, look, the clouds are stretching. And they're like, and Brooke is like, that must be what Edison was talking about. And Usopp is the one that has the realization of, yes, that's right. With the edge of the clouds further out, we'll be able to leap right into the ocean. Hey, that'll work. And we get like this little diagram of like, as the cloud would go out, the ship would go with it, and then they'd be able to jump down. So I'm like, true. We'll see how this works. And we cut to where we see Edison, and he seems to have like, he survived, but he's still very majorly injured from going through the laser grid, which we knew he was going to be very majorly injured. And I liked Edison. I still do. His design was adorable. And, it's like he's made his way to what would be like one of the island cloud machines, and he's like probably turned it up to max to get it to work the way they need it. And he's like, you Straw Hats better make it. Don't you dare get caught by the government. I don't think we're going to see much more of Edison because he's like wheezing and probably not in very good condition at the moment. And I mean, as I said, I like Edison. I kind of would have liked him to survive along with Lilith and Atlas and stuff, but I don't know what's going to happen with that. Someone may find him. I don't know. He's down in the same area where, like, some stuff is going on. We don't see any flames around him, so he might be at least in an area where it's not on fire, but that doesn't mean that he's going to survive. I don't know. And Vegapunk's message continues, and he's just like, and in truth, I only know a small fragment of the 100-year-long tale. It wouldn't be right to leave you with useless speculation, so I'll limit myself to the facts as I know them. So as we're seeing this, we're seeing, Egghead from the outside getting bombarded by the ships. We see other Marines trying to fight. We see, Dory and Bragi are still running with Luffy. And again, I can never remember which one's Dory and which one's Bragi. Sorry. It's like I can't remember which one's Oimo and which one's Kashi. Again, sorry. And he's, it's just like, enough, Straw Hat, this is pointless. And Luffy is still trying to fight against Mercury. He's still trying to use his, fist attacks against Mercury. And now that he's in, his Nico form, his, Gear 5th, he's trying to use those attacks to actually try to cause damage to Mercury. And it doesn't seem to be doing anything. So that's not helpful. So, before I finish with Vegapunk's speech, we're just going to go over what's happening with Luffy first. So, Luffy is, of course, using his, kind of Gear 2nd and 3rd techniques, trying to punch his way through Mercury, and it's not really causing any damage to Mercury as far as I can tell. And it's just like, this next move is going to work, and he's just like, no, put his hands on fire, and he's just in pain. And yet Dory and Bragi keep laughing at it, and they're just like, stop it, you're cracking us up. And so we're seeing that, and Luffy's like in pain. But Vegapunk's message continues, and it's just like, the star of this story was born 900 years ago in a beautiful, in a bountiful and advanced kingdom. So that's referencing back to the ancient kingdom. And just like the legendary sun god Nika from the fables of Elbath, I like that they have fables and Elbath, because of course Elbath is fable backwards. He too fought with stretching and an elastic body. They called him Joy Boy. He was the first man to take to the seas, the first one to be called a pirate. So I know that a lot of people had a lot of us have had speculation about the whole thing of like, well, we don't know what the name of the country is yet. That could be something that Vegapunk reveals, and that could still happen. Just maybe in the next chapter or something like that. But, he's like, okay, so yes, Joy Boy was this person. He existed. He had this devil fruit. That pretty much confirms that he was either Nika incarnate, or he was, the first to have the devil fruit and awaken it, which he may have not had to go through like the same setup that Luffy did in order to awaken it. It may have been something where he was like gifted it with the power of being awoken already. When he received the devil fruit, depending on how he got the devil fruit or how it was created. So there's that. But the other thing is, it's like this bountiful and advanced kingdom, which we knew that the Great Kingdom was this, very futuristic technology and everything like that, far more advanced than what like the Straw Hats and the One Piece world have now for the most part, even beyond what's on Egghead Island. So we kind of get that. And he's just like, he fought with an elastic and stretchy body. So there's that. And it was just like, and he was called Joy Boy, and he was the first pirate. So, throughout history in our world, there's been various different groups in places all over the world that have basically been like seafaring people that would then, raid other islands and raid other groups and kingdoms and stuff like that, and then leave. Taking treasure and, people with them, taking food and other supplies and things like that. Anything that they deemed of value that they felt was worth taking. And then they would take it and go back to wherever their home was, their base was. Of course, during the 14th, 15th, and 1600s, and even in the 17 and 1800s and such, pirates were a huge deal, particularly in, the Caribbean, for Pirates of the Caribbean references for anyone who cares for that. Which I like Pirates of the Caribbean. Elizabeth Swann is awesome. She's great. And I love Orlando Bloom. So there's like a bunch of that stuff that happens. So it's like in our world, there's not really like a specific origin for like where pirates came from. It's just there's always been like this kind of groups of people that would go and raid, and even like Vikings had like some pirate tendencies and stuff like that to a degree. So there's like different things there. But in the One Piece world, this seems to be Vegapunk is pointing out the fact that, oh, well, Joy Boy existed and stuff happened and he became what is basically the origin of where piracy came from. Now, a lot of us have had the theories of like, oh, Joy Boy's crew consisted of like other future, the past, ancestors of people who are the D Clan members, Monkey Clan and the Trafalgar Law and everything like that. That they were like their ancestors from these other branches of the D Clan that we've seen. And that they, as an homage to their captain, they took the D as part of their name and then passed it down through the generations until now, some of them forgetting what it meant, some of them just, rifts in the family and different things like that. I mean, 800 years is a long time. And if not enough stuff is written down, stuff gets forgotten. So there's a lot of that stuff. So there's this concept that, oh, Joy Boy was like this captain of this crew, which still is definitely very possible, given the information that we have been given. But we just don't know the full context for like, oh yeah, this is what we're going to get. And like, we still have to wait and see if Vegapunk gives us any more information about this. Was Joy Boy, we would like to hope Joy Boy was not like the concept of like the way that Blackbeard and Krieg and, Arlong and stuff like that, the way that these other bad pirates have been. We hope that Joy Boy and his crew were much more like the Straw Hats or, different ones who were pirates for the cause of wanting an adventure, of like, the romance with adventure and stuff like that, as opposed to the pillaging and destroying and other things types of pirates. Where like, yeah, they wanted treasure and stuff like that to a degree, but not to the point that they were going to just rob people blind for it. Unless you're Nami and it's bad people, so that's fine. But, we don't want... we want Joy Boy to be more closely to Luffy in regards to the type of captain that he was, to the type of pirate that he was, as opposed to the way that Blackbeard is, or the way that, Kaido was, or the way that the Doflamingo pirates were, or like so many of these other bad pirates that we've interacted with over the years and throughout the course of this story. We want Joy Boy to be more like Luffy and Shanks and, these other good pirates that we've interacted with. And, well, and I'll throw Law in there as well as a good pirate, because it's like, even though we haven't seen that much of, like, Law's adventure in regards to, like, his interactions with all these other islands as him and those Heart Pirates sailed, Law does not strike me as the type that's just going to pillage villages for no reason. And he's a doctor, and he would definitely take that very seriously and probably work on trying to help people that they came across who needed help. Or at least that's what we like to think. Kid and his crew are kind of like this in-between setup. We're like, yeah, they'll be violent to you if you laugh at them, but like, if you're at least nice to them, they may not cause you cause you much trouble beyond like, maybe causing a small riot in your bar or something like that, depending on stuff. But like, there's, throughout the course of the story, we've seen this whole spectrum of pirates, and even in some of the, original versions of Romance Dawn, like one of the first versions of Romance Dawn, Luffy at that time makes the comment that, there's the Peace Main pirates that are the ones that are just more in it for adventure, and then there's the Morganeers that are in it for just to cause destruction and chaos and pain and stuff like that to the people that they interact with. And, like, Luffy wanted to be more of the Peace Main pirate, not the Morganeer type. And he even mentions that, and those are based off of actual, like, pirate things from our world that Oda then, like, transferred into this. And while One Piece itself, the way that One Piece ended up being, doesn't really have, you can kind of divide them up a little bit based around what we've seen for, like, the different pirate crews. And, like, these ones kind of fall into the Morganeers, these ones kind of fall into the Peace Mains, and then there's some that are in the middle, in those regards. But, it's that whole concept of, like, how much of this, where on the spectrum did, where on, from one end to the other, for good to bad pirate you want to put it, where did Joy Boy fall? We as the audience want Joy Boy to be good. We want him to be good, because then that means that Luffy is like the spiritual successor to him, the way that Shanks, Luffy carry on Shanks and Roger's will, and that Roger wanted to, live in like Joy Boy's era and stuff like that, that they want to carry on that will, even if it is unintentional on Luffy's part. They're the inheritors of that will. And, we want to hope that Joy Boy and his crew were good pirates, were good people, even if that meant that they were fighting against the world government, and even if they still had this connection to the ancient kingdom and how that goes. Still a lot of questions that have to come from that in regards to, what else is Vegapunk going to tell us throughout the rest of this message? If it does get interrupted, what else is going to happen? What else from this information can Robin, divine from this information? Robin getting to, the Straw Hats getting to Ohara and hopefully finding the last road poneglyph wherever it is, and then eventually making it to Laugh Tale, and then we'll get this much more full information and context of everything, of how Joy Boy and the, and the Hito no Mi sun god Nika and the world government and Eam and the ancient kingdom and piracy and all this stuff, how this stuff actually comes together. It's like we're getting the ingredients slowly, and like we kind of know that some of these ingredients are going to go together in certain ways, but we don't know the full context of, like, if you want to go the baking route, like, what is this giant cake going to look like when it's finished? Or is it not going to be a cake at all? Is it going to be cookies or muffins or this giant souffle that can pop at a moment's notice? I've talked about Big Mom a lot lately, so there's food involved here. Sorry, plus I did this before lunch and I'm hungry. So it's like, it's like Vegapunk and Saul and Robin are kind of like slowly giving us all of the ingredients, but we don't have all of the ingredients, and we don't know how all of them are all going to work together into this recipe. It's like, we've got some bits, like, okay, the oven's going to be preheated here, but what kind of pan are we going to bake everything in? And are we going to be baking anything, or is it going to be something else? Are we going to be baking a pie, a cake? Are we going to be making a pot roast? Are we going to be making, this huge gourmet, soup? We don't know. Again, I'm hungry. Sorry. So that's what we have here. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. And since this will be going out just before Mother's Day, even though I'll have a Mother's Day video up, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers that are out there. Bye.